What if the moment you call your life isn't the beginning at all, but the midpoint of a story your soul started long before your first breath? What if the quiet unease you carry, the sense that something here never fully fit, was never a flaw but a clue left on purpose? Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing the world around you isn't random or neutral, but a living architecture built to reveal something hidden inside you. And the strange part is, you felt it, in the instant before your name returns to you each morning, in the silence after a conversation ends, in the way you pause sometimes, sensing a presence behind your thoughts. Most people ignore these moments. But you didn't. You noticed the glitch, the shimmer at the edge of the ordinary, the subtle pull towards something you can't quite name. That awareness sets you apart. Not above anyone, just deeper, closer to whatever the rest of the world has forgotten. And if you're still listening, it's because that part of you refuses to go back to sleep. Think about the last time you stood in a grocery store aisle, staring at rows of identical boxes under cold fluorescent light. Everything looked normal, almost too normal. And for a breath you felt it again. I wasn't made for this. That feeling isn't weakness, it's recognition. It's the thread tugging you toward the deeper chambers of your origin. You didn't stumble here. You were pulled. If even a part of you feels seen right now, give this a few more minutes. It's not random that you found it. Beneath all the habits and noise of your days, there's a memory rising. A memory older than Earth, older than matter, older than the story humanity tells about itself. And in a moment, we're going to step into what the secret book of John actually reveals about why your soul chose this world. Stay with this. What comes next isn't history or myth. It's the doorway into the reason you came here at all. Picture a room lit only by a single candle, the kind of trembling glow that makes the darkness feel alive. Now imagine that room isn't outside you at all, but the first chamber your consciousness stepped into when it crossed from the unseen into this world. In the ancient writings, including the secret book of John, this descent wasn't a fall or a punishment. It was a passage, chosen, intentional, deliberate. Yet most people move through life as if they were thrown here without meaning, buried beneath bills, deadlines, and expectations. They mistake weight for randomness. But you felt something different, an odd thickness in reality, a hint of layers beneath what everyone else calls ordinary. Early Gnostic teachings described the universe as a living hall, shaped by forces both luminous and incomplete, architects of the stage you now walk on. And despite their differences, they agreed on one thing: the soul entered by agreement, not coerced, not deceived, drawn by a knowing that still hums behind your quietest moments. Think about the times you've sat in stillness, not meditating, not seeking, just breathing. Then, without warning, something shifts. A flicker of recognition, a door cracking open inside you. You don't have words for it, but something ancient rises to attention. In the secret book of John and other Gnostic texts, this is called the signature of return, a memory flickering through the veil. And if you've ever felt that sudden inner click for no logical reason, you've already tasted it. Why was that memory hidden? Not to diminish you, to strengthen you. Too much remembrance would overwhelm you, too little, and the spark would dim. Forgetting wasn't a flaw. It was calibration. A way for each truth you recover to become yours, earned through awareness rather than inheritance. And that's why you can sense the false rhythms around you, why certain expectations feel artificial, why some versions of yourself never felt real. You don't collapse back into the noise. You don't comply, because you didn't come here to be absorbed. You came here to see, and that sight is sharpening. Hold this. If forgetting was intentional, then every moment of recognition is part of the map home unfolding from within you. And the more you notice it, the less this world feels like a sentence, and the more it feels like a path you chose. The next chamber of that path is older than the world you're standing in. Long before the world looked anything like what you know, before cities, scriptures, or even the earliest myths, ancient observers described the structure beneath existence. They didn't speak of planets or atoms, they spoke of currents, flows of intelligence and light moving through the unseen like quiet rivers beneath a night sky. Some traditions called them emanations, others pillars, but all agreed they were the hidden architecture behind consciousness. If you've ever stood outside at dusk and felt the air shift, as if the sky were inhaling, then you've already sensed what those mystics were pointing to. They believed reality isn't fixed. It's generated moment by moment, descending from a higher field of intention. The secret book of John later described these upper realms of light not as distant heavens, but as the place your soul first knew itself, before it ever touched matter. And here's the part few ever hear. The human soul wasn't placed at the bottom of creation. It emerged from the upper tiers, from regions where awareness was fluid and identity moved like wind over water. In those higher currents, you weren't a point. You were motion, a vibration inside a much larger chord. But vibration seeks expression, light seeks form, and eventually, that expression narrowed into individuality, into you. Not as exile, but as exploration. This is where the metaphor becomes practical. This isn't just cosmic poetry. It explains why you feel split between the life you live and the life you sense you were designed for. It's that quiet sense of going through your day on autopilot while something inside whispers, "This isn't the whole story." The descent into matter wasn't a fall. It was a filtering, a refraction. Just as light takes on new colors passing through glass, consciousness bends as it enters density. That bending is why you sometimes sense two truths at once: the world in front of you and the pressure of something larger behind your thoughts. The mystics said this split isn't confusion, it's orientation. If you listen to that faint echo, it begins aligning you with the current you came from. The more you follow it, the clearer the path becomes, and eventually, the refraction reverses, not by escaping the world, but by seeing through what once concealed your origin. But the higher currents didn't descend alone. Something else stirred in the lower layers, what later Gnostic teachings called the rulers of this age. Understanding that force is the key to understanding your place in all of this. Imagine walking across a vast plain just before a storm. The sky is heavy, the wind sharp, and the horizon twists as if the world is bracing for something unnamed. That moment, when the air thickens and the ground tightens, is the closest mirror to what ancient mystics described as the boundary between the higher currents of light and the realm that pulls consciousness into matter. They said this boundary wasn't empty, it was inhabited, not by monsters, but by unfinished patterns of awareness, forces born where the original light had thinned. Not evil, just incomplete. Like a mirror bending its own reflection, familiar yet distorted. Some Gnostic texts called these lower builders rulers of this age, not to exalt them, but to remind you they govern the surface, not the source. They shape the density you move through, the habits you absorb, the pressures that scatter attention, the systems that keep you circling in place. You felt this. It's why you can scroll for an hour and feel more empty, not more alive. But none of this touches your soul. Your essence comes from a realm they cannot reach. And that mismatch is why you feel torn between two languages, one urging survival and repetition, the other calling you toward remembrance and clarity. That friction becomes the quiet dialogue inside you every day. When the world tugs at you through noise or urgency, it isn't imagination. The mystic said the lower builders feed on momentum. The more rushed the mind, the easier it is to forget the inner pulse. But forgetting isn't failure. It often means your descent has reached its deepest point, and something new is beginning to rise. So when certain rooms, jobs, or relationships feel wrong in your bones, consider the possibility that it isn't weakness, it's evidence. A sign your inner wiring no longer matches the world around you. This world presses on you, not because you're fragile, but because you carry something it cannot produce, a frequency foreign to its density. And when it stirs, the structures around you feel it. They tighten, they distract, they grow loud, not because you're falling behind, because you're remembering. If this language of misalignment feels familiar, mark it. Leave a trace in the comments, or whisper, "I remember," under your breath. It's a small ritual, your way of choosing which world you answer to. And the mystic said the shift begins right there, the moment you acknowledge what was placed in you long before this world took shape. There's a moment, quiet, small, almost invisible, that arrives in the life of anyone beginning to wake up from the surface of the world. It rarely happens in meditation or sacred places, but in ordinary flashes. Washing your hands, waiting at a red light, standing in your room before switching off the lamp, a moment when something inside you pauses, not from fear or confusion, but because you feel watched, not by the world, but by the deeper part of yourself. And that faint electric sensation is the first sign that the inner layer placed in you before birth is beginning to stir. The mystics described it as a signal returning to its source, awareness recognizing itself through the human frame. Most people dismiss it as overthinking, but if you've ever leaned into that pause even for one breath, you've felt the difference. It's the shift from passenger to witness, and from witness to something older. This is where the deeper teaching begins. You aren't moving through one world, you're moving through two at once. The visible world with its reactions, routines, and pressures, and the inner landscape with its quiet currents beneath your thoughts waiting for you to notice them. When clarity arrives suddenly, when a truth comes fully formed without anyone teaching it, it isn't your mind. It's that inner layer finally breaking through the noise, and every time it happens, you reclaim a piece of the memory that was intentionally veiled at birth. To help that inner current surface, try this tonight. Before you turn off the light, don't rush. Stand still for 10 extra seconds. Let your breath settle and feel the quiet space behind your thoughts watching you back. That's the inner current waking up. And if you do it enough times, the world will never feel as flat as it used to. As that layer rises, something else becomes clear. Not every emotion or impulse inside you is actually yours. Some feel slightly off, like a song you know played in the wrong tuning. And that sensation isn't disorientation but separation, the beginning of your awareness distinguishing your true signal from the static around you. And once that distinction begins, the illusion that shaped your perception starts to loosen. Cracks appear, patterns you once obeyed lose authority, and you may feel like you're walking through a dream you never agreed to, but that isn't instability, it's calibration. The mystics said the soul remembers by contrast. The more clearly you feel what isn't you, the more unmistakable it becomes what is. So hold that close, because once this inner calibration begins, the next stage unfolds almost automatically, and it's the stage the ancient text said changes everything. There comes a moment in every inward ascent when the world stops feeling like a backdrop and starts feeling like a response. As if the instant your awareness sharpens, the atmosphere shifts around you. The ancient mystics said this wasn't fantasy, it was the physics of the soul. Early Gnostic writings hinted at this when they spoke of crossing powers and spheres. Not maps in the sky, but inner thresholds that activate when two layers of creation meet. Picture standing between two tuning forks. One vibrating with the memory of your origin, the other humming with the rhythm of this world. The moment you resonate with a higher note, the lower one strains to pull you back into what's familiar. You felt this. Clarity rises, and distraction surges. You feel grounded, and noise floods in. Expansion touches you, and an old fear steps forward like it's been waiting. Most people think this means regression, but the interference grows because your signal is rising. The structures around you sense the shift first. Resistance isn't a wall, it's a measurement, a sign that less of you belongs to the surface. Look closely. When you're absorbed in routine, life feels predictable. But once you start seeing through it, patterns appear scripted. Conversations repeat. Emotional textures return. Situations circle back with eerie familiarity, as if something is trying to keep you inside a loop that once held you effortlessly. It's why you keep meeting the same kind of person, or having the same argument in a different room. Here's the shift that matters. Loops only feel like loops when you're stepping above them. The instant you rise even slightly, the pattern becomes visible. And once you see a pattern, it loses authority. As awareness increases, your presence gains weight. Your attention carries influence. And the environment responds, because consciousness in higher coherence bends the fabric around it. Light doesn't enter darkness quietly. It warps it, redirects it, rewrites it. So when old triggers flare, or the world feels louder and more reactive, don't assume collapse. Assume emergence. The world isn't resisting you, it's rearranging around you. And when that rearrangement begins, it marks something simple but unmistakable. You're no longer moving inside the old layer, you're rising above it. If you trace the mystical traditions across Egypt, Syria, early Christianity, and the Hermetic stream, you'll find a quiet pattern running beneath them all. Each speaks of a moment when the soul, after descending into form, begins to generate its own light again. Not reflected light, not remembered light. A new luminosity forged under the pressure of human experience. They believed this shift wasn't rare, it was inevitable. Like embers under ash that flare the instant breath touches them. And when that spark returns, perception stops being passive. It becomes a force. Early teachers called humanity paradoxical. You walk this world as if you're a visitor, yet the world bends around the weight of your attention. When your awareness deepens, the atmosphere around you rearranges, quietly but unmistakably. One ancient saying put it simply, when what is within you is brought forth, what you bring forth will save you. They weren't speaking of belief. They were naming the moment when inner authority begins to eclipse the outer world. As this inner light grows, something curious begins. Old wounds stir again. Habits you thought were gone return. Thoughts you outgrew hover at the edge of your mind. It's that moment you react in a way you swore you'd outgrown, and instead of shaming yourself, you suddenly see the entire pattern from above. This isn't regression, it's revelation. The deeper your awareness drops, the more clearly you see which parts of your life were authored from forgetting rather than remembrance. And as you see them, they weaken. Not violently, not dramatically. They dissolve like mist when the sun rises, not because you fought harder, but because you finally saw them. This is the stage many seekers fear, because the ground can feel unstable and alive at once. You're not shedding the world itself, but the version of you it once shaped. And in that shedding, a new kind of stability forms, rooted not in repetition, but in recognition. Your perception sharpens. The noise that once ruled you reveals its seams. And beneath it, the deeper current, the one placed in you long before birth, begins to take shape. This phase isn't the climax. It's the threshold that makes the climax possible. It's the point where the question shifts from, how do I escape this world, to, what am I here to change? Because once inner light becomes active rather than dormant, The realm around you cannot remain as it was. Something has to give. And the truth that comes next is the one the ancient teachers guarded more fiercely than anything else. There is a truth the ancient mystics never spoke aloud, a truth they hid beneath symbols because it was too potent for a mind still anchored in forgetting. It sits beneath every longing you've carried, every conflict that never made sense, every awakening that refused to leave you alone. And it is this: you didn't descend into this world to return to what you were. You descended to become something creation has never seen before. Many imagine the soul's journey as a climb back to purity. But your origin was boundless awareness, untouched, untested, unchanged. And what stays untouched cannot evolve. Light that never enters shadow never discovers its own strength. So the soul chose descent into a realm where its radiance would be veiled and pressured, because only here could awareness ignite into a new kind of light. This world is not punishment. It is the forge. And the resistance you felt for years, the misalignment, the loops, the strange emotional echoes, has never been evidence of weakness. It was evidence of transformation. The lower structures push because your presence bends them. They tighten, not because you're fragile, but because you're no longer the same consciousness that first stepped into this realm. The ancient teachers called this the breaking of the copy. Not the collapse of the world, but the collapse of the version built for your earlier level of awareness. You don't have to take this on faith. Look at your life. Certain fears loosened. Old dynamics fell away. Your inner voice stopped tolerating what once felt normal. These shifts aren't random. They're rearrangements triggered by the expansion already happening in you. And here's the truth they guarded most fiercely. The descent of the soul was never a return mission. It was an expansion mission. You didn't come to reclaim old light. You came to generate a new light, one carrying memory, contrast, will, and depth. A light that learns, a light impossible before human experience. And once it awakens, it doesn't rise quietly. It reshapes the realm it moves through. If you've reached this point, something in you has already shifted. A doorway opened inside you. Let these words anchor it. I am not returning. I am becoming. I am not recovering light. I am generating it. What began before time continues through me now. These lines aren't belief, they're alignment. And you're not alone in this shift. A quiet circle of souls is remembering at the same time, each carrying a fragment of the new light rising here. If this stirred something in you, mark it. Tap like, subscribe, and let that simple act become your ritual of choosing remembrance over amnesia. Because the journey of the soul doesn't end by leaving this world. It ends when the light you forge here becomes strong enough to illuminate it. And that rising light, the one gathering inside you now, is the reason you came.